In 1994, golf writer Peter Dobereiner made a bold claim. If you compiled a list of the 5 most influential people behind European golf, it would read John Jacobs, John Jacobs, John Jacobs, John Jacobs, and John Jacobs. Here's the problem. This man never won a major championship. He only played in the Ryder Cup once. By traditional standards, he wasn't even close to being the greatest player of his generation. Yet he created the European Tour. He revolutionized how golf is taught. He trained every top coach you know today. So, how did a golfer who admitted he wasn't confident enough become the most overpowered figure in golf history? John Robert Maurice Jacobs was born on March 14, 1925, at Lindrick Golf Club in Yorkshire, England. His father, Robert, was the club's professional. But Robert carried invisible wounds from the First World War. He'd been badly gassed in combat and never fully recovered. On a December day in 1934, when John was just 9 years old, his father passed away tragically. The boy was raised by his mother, Vivian, who worked as the club's stewardess, and his cousin Jack, who took over as the club professional. There were no formal golf lessons, no wealthy tutors, just necessity and observation. At Lindrick, gorse bushes lined the left side of every hole. Those thorny plants swallowed golf balls like hungry mouths. Young John had a simple goal: don't hook the ball into the gorse. He taught himself through trial and error, focusing on results rather than textbook positions. This practical approach would later revolutionize the sport. School was torture for him. "I've never been so miserable in my life as I was on the first day of class after summer break," he later admitted. "But it's why I became a good teacher. I know exactly what it's like to not understand." During the Second World War, Jacobs served in the Royal Air Force from 1945 to 1947. There he met Rita, who would become his wife and partner for nearly 6 decades. After the war, he turned professional in 1947, working as an assistant at Hallamshire Golf Club. But his first real break came 2 years later, when he landed a position at Gezira Sporting Club in Cairo, Egypt. Suddenly, this working-class English kid was teaching golf to princes, kings, and the Middle Eastern elite. Then, in 1952, revolution erupted across Egypt. Gunfire echoed through Cairo's streets. Luxury hotels burned. Martial law locked down the city. John and Rita Jacobs walked through darkness, pressing themselves against walls to avoid detection. They abandoned everything they'd built and fled back to England in early 1952. Back home, Jacobs rebuilt his career. He became the professional at Sandy Lodge Golf Club near Watford, a position he'd hold for 12 years. And during this period, he achieved his greatest success as a tournament player. In 1955, Jacobs earned his only appearance in the Ryder Cup. At Thunderbird Country Club in California, he won both his matches. The highlight came in singles against Kerry Middlecoff, the reigning Masters champion. The match went to the 36th hole. Jacobs holed a 4-foot shot to win one up. It was one of the few bright spots for Great Britain and Ireland that year. 1957 brought his finest season. In March, he defeated Gary Player 2-1 in the 36-hole final of the South African Match Play Masters in Johannesburg. Player was a rising star in brilliant form. The first prize was £200. 5 months later, Jacobs captured the Dutch Open, winning by 3 strokes after shooting a course record 67 in the final round. He even made a hole-in-one during the second round. But that was as good as it got. Jacobs played in 14 Open championships. His best finish was a tie for 12th. He finished second multiple times in British tournaments, but never won a major title at home. "I was mad to be a great player," he later confessed. "I got a reputation as a teacher and only wanted to be a player, but we don't always get to choose our gifts." His playing contemporary Peter Allis understood why Jacobs never reached the top. "John wasn't a bully, which winners often are," Allis observed. "His psyche was more delicate." Jacobs himself admitted the truth. "If I'd had half the confidence as a player, that I had as a teacher, I'd have been a very good player, but I wasn't confident. If I made a bogey before I made a birdie, I was always under pressure. But this failure became his greatest asset. Because he'd struggled with every possible swing problem born from anxiety, he could diagnose anyone. Before Jacobs, golf instruction was shrouded in mystery. Teachers focused on positions. Your backswing should look like this. Your follow-through should look like that. The problem? Every great player had different positions. Bobby Jones didn't look like Ben Hogan. Sam Snead didn't look like Byron Nelson. Students left lessons more confused than when they arrived. Jacobs cut through the confusion with one revolutionary idea. Golf is what the ball does. That was my breakthrough as a teacher. His method was elegantly simple. Watch the ball flight. Diagnose the club face position and swing path. Fix the swing. He could identify problems in 10 minutes just by watching someone hit balls. Sometimes he'd turn his back to the player, watching only the ball flight, and still give a perfect diagnosis. He distilled the entire golf swing into 3 words: 2 turns and a swish. He taught that golf has only one purpose: deliver the club head to the ball correctly. How you look doing it didn't matter if it was repeatable. In 1972, Jacobs published Practical Golf with co-author Ken Bowden and illustrator Anthony Ravielli. The book became the Bible for golf instructors worldwide. It's still on every top 10 list of greatest instruction books ever written. Butch Harmon, who would later coach Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, made it required reading for his assistants. John Jacobs wrote the book on coaching. Harmon declared, "There is not a teacher out here who does not owe him something." Jacobs trained an entire generation of elite instructors. Hank Haney, Jim McLean, David Ledbetter, Jim Hardy, all of them learned from John Jacobs. Haney, who worked under Jacobs in the late 1970s, called him the greatest teacher in the history of the game. The essence of what I teach, I learned from John. But the most dramatic proof of his genius came from 3 very different stories. The first happened at Royal Lytham during the 1969 Open Championship. Jack Nicklaus, arguably the greatest player who ever lived, was struggling badly in a practice round. Jacobs was walking with the group, watching. On the second hole, Nicklaus hit his drive 50 yards over the railway line on the right. His second ball nearly struck spectators on the 15th green, way left. The third hole brought the same disaster. By the 6th tee, Nicklaus was furious. He turned to Jacobs. "You're supposed to know about these things. What do you think?" Jacobs had been waiting for this moment. "Thank God you asked." One look told him everything. The back of your neck is parallel to the ground and you'll do that all day. Nicklaus needed to stand taller at address, chin up, creating room for a proper turn. Then came the audacity. Jacobs told the greatest player alive, "You have tremendous physical strength, tremendous mental strength, and you're an incredible winner, but you're doing it wrong." "It's frightening because you could do real harm," Jacobs later reflected, "but I would go forth because something inside that I could not ignore told me I was right." Later that year at the Ryder Cup at Birkdale, Nicklaus greeted him. "Hi, John, I've got it now." From 1970 to 1975, Nicklaus played some of the best golf of his career. Jacobs modestly noted, "I dare say I think he became better because of me." The second story was simpler, but just as remarkable. A golf journalist named Goran Zakrassin was shaking an umbrella to dry it outside a restaurant entrance. Jacobs watched from a distance, studying only the motion of Zakrassin's wrist and shoulder. He walked up. "Ah, you're the type who hits the ball with your right shoulder." Zakrassin was stunned. That was exactly his swing fault. Jacobs had never seen him swing a golf club. He diagnosed the problem from watching an umbrella shake. His method worked on everyone. The greatest player alive, a random journalist, a grieving widow. The code was universal. But Jacobs wasn't satisfied revolutionizing just teaching. In the late 1960s, he turned his attention to professional golf's broken structure. British tournaments were controlled by a committee of club professionals who prioritized internal politics over growth. prize money was small. There was no European integration. Tour players had no voice in their own fate. Jacobs collected 29 signatures from top players demanding change. His vision was radical, a pan-European tour, not just British events. On October 1st, 1971, Jacobs became the first tournament director general of what would become the European Tour. His team was tiny. John Bywaters, George Sims handling public relations, and Marina Bray as his secretary. Bywaters had told him, "John, you owe this. You're the one person that can bring this whole thing together." The first 3 months were extraordinary. Jacobs lost 2 sponsors but gained 5. By Christmas 1971, he'd secured £443,450 in prize money. That figure had doubled from earlier that year. He created the Continental Swing, incorporating French, German, and Spanish Opens into the schedule. ITV agreed to broadcast 4 tournaments, giving the sport unprecedented television exposure in Britain. On April 12, 1972, the first official European Tour event took place at Pals Golf Club in Spain for the Spanish Open. Mark McCormack, founder of IMG, observed, "It may be no more than a slight exaggeration to say that these 12 months saw the tour progress by a quarter of a century, and that is quite a trick." The cost was steep. Many club professionals who'd been his friends now saw him as a traitor, but the transformation was complete. A woman named Mrs. Callender embodied a different kind of transformation. She took up golf at age 60 after her husband died, hoping to ease her grief. She saw Jacobs every week for lessons and did exactly as he instructed. 2 years later, she was playing in regular club competitions and loving the game. "That's probably the best job I've ever done," Jacobs said. "I was very sympathetic toward the bad golfer who tried." Jacobs served as Ryder Cup captain in 1979 and 1981, leading the first 2 teams that included continental European players, not just those from Great Britain and Ireland. But 1981 brought a crisis that haunted him. Seve Ballesteros, the brilliant Spanish star, had boycotted most European Tour events that season over a dispute about appearance money. As captain, Jacobs desperately wanted Seve on the team. He called Ballesteros in America. "Seve, I want you to come back to play in Europe." Jacobs pleaded, "I can't guarantee you will get one of the 2 Ryder Cup places that are up for grabs. The organizing committee can fill them as it sees fit. But I will be voting for you." Ballesteros returned. Jacobs voted for him, but Neil Coles and Bernhard Langer voted against. Seve was excluded from the team. He was furious and declared he would never play in the Ryder Cup again. Jacobs had to take public responsibility despite doing the right thing. Only Tony Jacquelin's diplomacy years later would heal the wound. Even revolutionaries face impossible choices. But Jacobs kept pushing on another front entirely. He recognized a fundamental barrier to the sport. Golf can be an expensive sport. Ranges were an inexpensive way to get more people playing. He partnered with Laddie Lucas to build the first floodlit driving range at Sandown Park. Suddenly, working people could practice at night. They could practice in winter. Year-round access became reality. By 1972, Jacobs had established a driving range business across the United Kingdom. What had been an aristocratic pastime became mass recreation. Millions of people who could never afford country club memberships could now learn the game. In 1997, Queen Elizabeth II awarded Jacobs the Order of the British Empire. 3 years later, he was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame. At the ceremony, he said simply, "Now I am among all my heroes." In 2006, his wife Rita died after 57 years of marriage. Even in his 80s, Jacobs kept a practice net in his garden. He'd sit on a stool, hit 3 balls, rest, and repeat. "I might not strike them quite like I used to," he said, "but the game never leaves you." In January 2017, friends visited during his final weeks. His dog Joey stayed curled beside him. His daughter Jo remembered. There was this outpouring of loyalty and friendship, a lot of grown men getting choked up on the phone. It was sad and wonderful. My father had a wonderful life. John Jacobs died on January 13th, 2017, at age 91. He left behind 3 fundamental changes to golf. First, he transformed how the sport is taught. Before Jacobs, instruction was mystery and confusion. After Jacobs, it became logic and clarity. As Butch Harmon said, John's stuff is simple and easy to understand because it's right. It works for every player who ever lived or will live. Second, he restructured professional golf itself. The European Tour, now a billion-dollar organization, exists because of his vision and determination. Third, he democratized access. His floodlit driving ranges opened golf to millions who never could have played otherwise. Guy Kinnings of IMG Golf Europe noted, "When players get hopelessly confused with their swings, they have one common request: call Jacobs."